Just welcome to the People's Mic, Black MAGA versus Black Liberals. I have my cousin here, Darren, who set off a chain messaging jamboree of 747 messages after he asked me a question after
One
our
question.
one question. And I'm going to read that question for you right now because I want to make sure that I get the quote right. He said, and what I want to know, this is after I posted on our family WhatsApp. And what I want to know is why you keep bringing up MAGA, Trevor. LOL. Do that in there. If you don't like them, why do you keep bringing them up? MAGA are U.S. citizens just like you. People always refer to MAGA as though they are some type of foreign terrorist organization. And off for 7 days plus one, a
Yeah.
chain reaction of messaging from our mostly liberal, in fact, so mostly liberal that Darren is the one true conservative representing. And I have a feeling that you are not, you don't take too kindly to the term Black MAGA. Am I correct?
Um, no, I don't. Not that I don't take too kindly to it. What it is that while I do support Trump, I am a libertarian Republican. I'm not necessarily MAGA. Make America Great Again is a slogan, and it's not an organization, so I can't be part of something that's not really an organization. It's just a slogan.
Okay, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. But I want to set the premise. I want to set the stage because the reason I launched with the beginning and where this started and the week of back and forths, audio messages, text messages, links, is because, as I shared on some of our promos, our family are, I would say, and Darren may agree with this, probably the biggest talkers that I have ever known as a person coming from this family. I thought it was everybody, but as I got older and engaged with other families, I realized that it's something unique to our family. Would you agree with that, Darren?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I would say that in that week and one day of messaging, there must have been a few hours of audio messages,
Yeah.
audio text at least.
A
I
few,
couldn't
yeah.
listen a few, and I couldn't listen to them all. So I was just like, listen, you guys, let's just, it's better when you talk face to face. First of all, it's easier, it flows. You could kind of get the visual cues, and yeah, we were like, let's do it. Let's set the stage for a live stream, and I was like Darren was there, one man against a barrage of other neighbors from the liberal left,
Yeah, it was a 20v1.
20v1, and Darren held and is still holding his own because even to this day, today, it's still going on. But I bring that up to say this. You know, I put it out there. We talk about what are we going to do. You hear it from all sectors of um, our culture, in activism, in politics, in in schools, in academics. And the term academic is, it's probably apropos here, because when it's talk and theory, it's not something that I believe in, and I try to make it a point that anytime you have something to say, that let's follow it up with some action, because what's the point of talk? You just kind of come back to the same place. So I put it out there, and I actually sent this challenge out to Darren before, and he didn't take me up on the challenge. So I was like, okay, Darren, I invited you to one of our previous Friday night podcasts, and I want you to come on, but I want you to be ready to follow it up with a call to action or action yourself. And I put that out there to the family. And here
Yes, you
we
did.
are. Here we are. Yes, thank you for acknowledging that. And here we are, Saturday night after a week of build-up, and we've got the one against many. And guess who shows up? The
Just
one,
the one.
the one. I don't know what that says about the left or the right. And I myself, I'm moderate to left. but I was the moderator. I was not coming here to debate Darren. So what I'm
Right.
going to do is, since no one else want to show up, first of all, I don't want to hear anything from any of you liberals, not just from my family, but in general, or anybody from the right as well, coming to me with anything about an issue on either side of the political spectrum without coming to me with a call to action first, because this is where it ends. We are 30, how many days away from the election?
I think it's like 32 or 31.
32 or 31 days away from the election. And it's time for action. Even if it's just a call to say I'm going to vote or I'm going to vote, I'm a write-in a vote, whatever it is. That's all I want to hear for the next 32 days. After that, we could go back to posting. I mean, they're probably posting now instead of coming to engage. You could post all you want. I'm disengaged from that. I'm about action. So Darren, I want to now introduce you, and I want you to introduce yourself actually. And actually, I want you with um the head what do you call that, head wrap. I
Yeah,
want you
sure.
to just speak a little bit about that as well. So Darren, the floor is yours.
All right. I mean, I'm going to keep it simple. As you know, my name is Darren. I'm a family member of Trev, and I'm a libertarian Republican, school of Ayn Rand. Uh, I am voting for Donald Trump based on, I'm literally for one main thing that I'm voting for, and that's basically on my Second Amendment right. Um, and that's what I'm voting for. I can explain other things. I can get into depth into different political things with that, but that's my main issue right now. And as far as this goes, I've been wearing these for years, as my cousin will let you know. He's seen me in many family functions with these things on. Um, I don't agree with what's going on over in the Middle East. I am for a two-state solution, but as of right now, I am for peace in the Middle East, and that's why I chose to wear this tonight in my hot house.
Well, yeah, Darren has always been a man of values, and he's very outspoken about his points of view. And this recent thread of discussions that we had on our family line, and just we have dozens and dozens of we have a huge family, and
Yeah,
I when Darren posted this, I want to read my response as well, so we could start from here. And I could share some of the responses because I did capture some of them. Actually, unfortunately, admittedly knowing that people would probably not show up, but I always have a
okay,
backup. So I came ready. I came ready
okay.
with the other perspective. But Darren is going to get his chance to share because, this message is going to get out. It may be a dozen people, maybe a few people, but it's going to get out. So people are going to hear this message. Maybe 100 people, depending. We've had from 50,000 views to one view. Um, so Darren has a stage where I'm going to try to play not only devil's advocate, but also my own perspective, uh, but not as not fully leaning into my left, because I still am acting as a moderator, and I want Darren to get the credit for showing up. In other words, having his perspective be heard above those who are not here. So I'm going to share mine, what I wrote and the response I had to your first message. And I said, and you remember this, when it comes to MAGA, first, they operate with a top-down authoritarian structure. I referenced Trump losing a Democratic election and being in complete denial of that, to the point of being the first president in my lifetime to run after he lost. A thirst for power that is extreme, even for our power hungry public officials. Second, MAGA supports a leader of low morality, which goes against scripture. And finally, from an economic justice perspective, I can't support billionaires. That was my response to Darren. Darren, do you want to respond to that again? And I will retort. And initially we had 2 minutes, so that's going to be, since we don't have any other debaters. Uh, let's make it 4 minutes if you need it. All right. So what's your response to that?
Um, I mean, that's your opinion. Um, and yes, within your lifetime, no, there hasn't been any presidents to run after losing a Democratic election again, but other presidents have done it prior. I can name three, or well, not name three, but I know there is three. I think one was uh got his name, but it was back in like the early 1900s. And there was one more after that. I think it was Nixon, I believe. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that one, but there was two or three that actually ran after that.
It wasn't Nixon.
Uh,
He lost and he ran after he lost, but he never was in office. Yeah.
okay, all right. So, um, as far as the low morality, like I said, that's your opinion. I mean, of course, there's questionable things about Trump. I'm not saying he's a saint. I'm not voting for him based on his track record of obnoxiousness, right? I'm voting for him based on his policies that he was running on, right? So that's what I'm voting on.
But does character, and sorry, I think we'll just go back and forth and we'll
Okay.
give each other space. Does character Why doesn't character matter when it used to matter? Well, I mean, not to an extent, but I think we've lowered the bar so much to the point that we're ignoring more blatant. We've taken it to a new level. The things that he said about his opponents, certain segments of our population, um, the fact that he lost an election. I mean, that to me is the key character flaw. Like, doesn't that matter anymore?
I mean, to some people, I guess it matters. I think, I think the United States political arena at present is not what it used to be, when character mattered, right? Like, I think character stopped mattering after, not mattering, but character stopped being a point of issue when, I mean, we can go to Bush, to Clinton, to Bush Senior. Some some may even say Reagan. So it's subjective as to what kind of character you're actually looking for to be in the White House or in any political seat in the government.
So my question to that is, don't you think that, well, I wouldn't say what don't you think, but I'll tell you what I think. I feel like a part of the strategy, when you are looking to uh, basically have a demographic or as many people lose interest because it's just so bad they do not want to get involved in the politics. And by suppressing the vote, not in a conspiratory way, but in a um, marketing strategic way, that just turning people off. Like, I'm frustrated with the system. And in a way, I agree with you in one sense, in that both parties are at fault, and it's always been that way. And we could go back to some of the discussions that we had on the line, and actually next week's debate, if I have to debate myself, it's going to be individualism versus community, something that I've discussed on other podcasts.
Okay.
And the reason that I bring that up is because I think that this, and we're not going to go off on this tangent, but I just want to mention it here, that the
Mhm.
capitalist system is one in which brought us to this point of everyone, left, the right, the moderates, are they are involved, they are taking part, they're participating in the model that will eventually cannibalize itself. People will do harm because they're looking at the individual. And if you look inward as opposed to outward to community, in the end, it's unsustainable, because eventually, even if you're on this team today, you may be a part of the team, but you want to be the starting quarterback. So you're going to take from the third string quarterback, you're going to take down that first string quarterback because you need that position. And not only with the internal issues, but the externalities. We spoke about climate change because capitalism, if you're thinking about your company, you're thinking about yourself, you're thinking about your nation, then you're not thinking about the environment. You're not thinking about another country. You're not thinking about Africa. You're not thinking about South America. You see what's happening with the rainforest in South America. They have to take care of self. So how do you feel about that? Like, don't you think that it's just something where we all just so frustrated that that's a strategy, and yet we're falling into that strategy?
Um, to a certain extent, yeah. Yeah, I think people are frustrated with the political system. I mean, back in the 80s, you probably got a 40%, 50% turnout in votership. Today, I think the last election was won with a 28% voter turnout or something like that. I think it was 28% if I remember correctly. So I think people are frustrated with what's going on. And I think with the advent of the internet, I think a lot of people are open to more information. And I think they're seeing the BS that's going on and they're losing faith in the system.
Hmm. Hmm. That internet piece is something that we didn't mention, we didn't touch on, not on my any of my podcasts in the last year, and not on the WhatsApp, because that is so key. The fact that what's happening with Facebook, what's happening with social media, and not only between each other. I mean, the first time when Trump ran, um, they really introduced this strategy of using Facebook and social media to
But that wasn't Trump. That was actually Obama. Obama was the internet king.
he was. But what I was going to say, yes, you're right. But what Trump did is he used Facebook uh, and you may disagree with me, to spread uh, division, to sow division. Him, um, his campaign, his media campaign managers, and I can't remember the names, but also combine that with him rolling out the red carpet for other agents, not domestic but international. Russia wants you to look at her emails. Being open to having. That's when we first saw people being pitted against each other based on false stories, based on you know a pizza. Remember the famous pizza story about Hillary Clinton is running a pizza child thing out of this. That's the first time we were hearing stories like that. Obama used it in a positive way, a more positive way. So you're right with that. I don't know if you agree with me on all of those points, but I'm just echoing what you said about the internet and how that's really a big part of the division and the toxic discourse. And again, we're going to go off on a tangent because for me, that also speaks to capitalism, not to go off because I want to bring it back to the MAGA discussion, but
Mhm.
just want to hear your feedback on you echoing the sentiment about capitalism versus community
Oh,
with
okay.
Facebook.
Um, yeah, I agree to an extent. I think the US was divided for a long time now. It's just that because we're on social media and we're on the internet so much now, like, in the early 2000s, we weren't on the internet as much as we are today,
Mhm.
right? So I think with the access to so much information, whether you can verify it or not, I think it caused division inside of the United States, regardless of Trump or Obama or whoever. I think the division was always there. It's
Mm,
just exacerbated more because of the internet. We're now seeing it real time, in other
mhm.
words, right? So I agree with you on to that extent. Um, as far as the other stuff, I mean, the Russia thing was proven wrong and all the other stuff. Um, so I agree with you to that extent. You want me to go into capitalism and individualism, or you just want to keep it as
You could touch on it. We'll come back to this another day, but I want to hear, yeah, since I brought it up, I want to give you the floor to respond to that.
okay? So my thing about, I mean, I agree with you to an extent. So I'm a capitalist, right? I think capitalism is one of the best systems we have available that suits everybody's needs, right? Um, I'm not fully understanding your angle from the individualistic standpoint, but you can be an individual within capitalism, right? I'm sorry, but you're more for community. I'm sorry, I meant to
Yeah,
say community.
right. I apologize.
So you can be a community with inside capitalism, right? It just depends on if you have a what you want that community to actually do, right? Because in today's world, everything revolves around finance, economics, money, right? So if you're trying to have a uh a community of just holistic type of things, I mean, somehow you have to keep that community going. So you're going to need finances at some point. So you're going to have to, you're going to have to go into capitalism at some point if that's what you're trying to do. So I don't know if you want to change the whole system to a community oriented thing where it's like kind of like a Star Trek society. I forgot what they call that, but like where there's no money, you kind of like base everything off of what you what you do in society.
Well, what I would say, so and so I would use this quote that they use actually for democracy, and I'll switch it, uh, exchange democracy for capitalism. And the quote goes, "Capitalism is the worst of all systems, except for all the rest." So I get it. I get it. And to answer your question, building off of that quote, uh, I don't want. I believe, despite the fact that it's a inward pointing, and I don't think that, I think in the short term you can do all types of things that look like community. I work for a corporation that donates $100 million a year to community, but while they're, you know, making, how much is it, 5 billion a year of what I believe is exploited labor. So there's a trade-off. They could look like they're the community in the short term, but in the long term, what are they doing to the community? All of the local shops are gone. Any big box national chain, what is done in this very community that I am living in right here, we've been here for 20 in Florida for 26 years. And when we first moved down here, they were mom and pop, um, hardware stores.
Wow, it's been
Mom and
that long. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. Yeah, I say that all the time. But yeah, 1999 is when we moved down, so 25 years. And
Wow. Okay.
in that time, um, the big box stores really pushed out the small mom and pop shops, and that really takes away from community and having agency in how we treat our community. A shop owner will treat their employee completely different than a big box owner, and not only is it about treating each other in a civil, sustainable way, but it's about the dollars that leave that community and go to Wall Street and come back to the community for pennies on the dollars. And so I hear what you're saying, and I think, because my the short answer is, don't I don't want to end capitalism, but I believe that we need to progress, and in that progression, we actually need to change directions, because if you take down capitalism, it'll take down the world, because every country, every aspect of our civilization is so in intertwined with this beast that we have grown over the past, few hundred years. But let's get back to the MAGA, Black MAGA versus Black liberals. This is what we're talking about today. We have Darren, my cousin, who posted on a WhatsApp, led to 747 messages as of yesterday, and more going today. Darren was one against many, the only Black MAGA supporter on the line, and we all came at him, including myself. We invited them
That's no
here,
problem.
everybody, and he stood strong,
Even
and I
even
commend
my
him for that.
mom came after me.
It's so true. Yes, Auntie came at him, and Darren, I invited them all to come, and Darren is the only one that showed up. So this is, and I said it last week. We are a bunch of talkers, not speakers, talkers,
Talkers, yes,
and
yes.
that holds true. So I mean, I got the backup because I knew this might happen. So I'm gonna read the next quote from one of our. I'm not even gonna give the name of our relatives since they're not here. They may not want to have their names
Okay,
out there.
all right.
But if you it's doesn't. I don't think we need the name to.
No, we
Uh,
don't, we don't,
all
we
right.
don't.
So one of our relatives
Yeah,
said,
right.
Donald Trump is a twice impeached felon, convicted dozens of times over who has also been, and these are posts on WhatsApp, so the spelling is off. So just forgive me if I read it as it was misspelled. Um, a, a twice impeached felon convicted dozens of times who has also been found culpable for fraud and sexual assault. Nothing subjective about the court rulings. I don't really need to take my analysis of the man past that. I think it's a liberalization of law and justice that is being pushed by people who call themselves conservative. And there is an enduring irony in that. Darren, what do you have to say to this comment?
Um, Trump 2024.
Well, being that our liberal poster isn't here, I am not going to push back on that. I'm going to leave it out there. Let's go to the next one. All right. This is a quote. The fundamental proposals of Project 2025 and Agenda 47 are based, at best, on a flawed understanding of American history and, at worst, on a desire to return to our life to an antebellum structure. I couldn't understand before why the 1619 project was so virulently opposed by so many people when it was just American history put into context, especially when it came to Black folk. What's your comment to that?
Okay, so Project 2025. Okay, so this is the part I wanted to get into, right? And this was my aim to come on to your platform for, because I want other people to come in and see us talking about this issue starting with Project 2025, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Project 2025 is done by the Heritage Foundation, as most people should know by now. It is not something that Trump endorsed, right? Now, what people have to understand is how think tanks in the government work. Every president gets some type of policy from the Heritage Foundation and the 1,000 other think tanks around Washington, D.C., right? There's the Carnegie Foundation, there's the Rockefeller Foundation, there's, of course, the Heritage Foundation, and many others, right? I mean, you can look up on the internet list of think tanks and a whole bunch of them will come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so I'm not going to speak on Project 2025 because that's not Trump's agenda, right? I'll speak on Agenda 47. Agenda 47. Well, let me go into the second part of what our relative said when they said that these people are trying to take us back to pre-Civil War, right? I don't agree with that. Um, I think that's used as a fear mongering tactic to get, you know, quote unquote black people in line. And when I mean Trump clearly stated what he meant by make America great again, right? In the first campaign, when he was on campaign, in 2016, when he was first campaigning, the whole make America great thing again was about bringing America back to an industrial powerhouse, right? As of today, America produces barely anything, right? We produce things here and here, but in other words, made in USA is not a thing like how it used to be when we were kids, right? I remember being a kid and I could pull up a t-shirt or some jeans and it'll say made in USA on it. Or I can go to a television company such as RCA. We used to buy TVs from RCA. Those things said made in America. Or I mean, Dell Computer is still around, but I think they have a lot of foreign stuff in it now. IBM. We used to have a lot of IBM computers. We still have it today to an extent, but it's Silicon Valley and the manufacturing plant and the manufacturing sector has not been in America in a strong way since I would say the 90s, right? So this argument about, and secondly, Trump was in office for 4 years. Did he make any type of laws that would take us back to the civil rights era or civil war? He didn't say he wanted to make anybody slaves or whatever. So he didn't bring back any black codes or anything of that sort. So all that rhetoric is just fear mongering, in my opinion, right? And I can back it up, but I'll just say it's my opinion for right now.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And I will push back a little bit on this, but again, I want just want to clarify for me, my own economic, my own social and activism is centered in economic activism, economic justice. These other topics, I do pay attention to them, but not to the extent that I do with economic justice, which is why I wanted my family members to come on. Much of what you speak on, I can't push back in the way that it was being pushed back to on WhatsApp. So I want you to take that into the account. But there's some basic understandings of what's happening here in my point of view, and I appreciate your point of view, and I appreciate you coming on to explain that. But as far as specific, getting into the mind of Trump and isolating the MAGA theme to just economics or to having to manufacturing, uh, it's debatable. When you think about what he, and again, this is where I get shaky on the facts, but in not supporting the unions in the auto factories, Biden came in and did that. Obama did that. Trump is the one that really didn't. That's actually anti-union. He made a quote recently about firing union members. But again, I don't know enough about that to push back too hard on that. What I can speak a little bit more on is about taking us back to a time and asking that question: when was America ever great? Because I echo the sentiment of our relative who said that. I feel like even if, for the sake of argument, you were correct, um, and he's talking about making things at making let's make things manufacturing in America. And I've heard for the record that his hats are made in China. I heard for the record his ties are made in China. He's so. But you may have an answer to that. I don't do research on these aspects, even though I should. It's kind of an economic idea, but it's capitalist economics, so I don't do too much research. Anyway, um, so about making America great again. What I see with Black MAGA is
Black
there's a
MAGA or
stat.
just MAGA in a whole?
Hmm? Sorry.
Black MAGA or MAGA in a whole?
Uh, I would say Black MAGA. I'm going to start with Black MAGA, and then how MAGA is leveraging Black MAGA, how they're dividing us and pitting us against so like you and I I don't get this vibe from you. You, in my opinion, are well thought out about this. But
Okay.
when you see most of the sentiments that I hear, and they ask a question, for example, what has Kamala ever done for blacks? What has Biden ever done for blacks? Um, or Trump has done this for blacks. I mean, first of all, I don't believe that any party is looking out for blacks because we do not have a unified voting bloc. So throw that out. Until we unify as voters, nobody, not Kamala, not Trump, not anybody will do anything for blacks. That's just the way politics works, in my opinion. Um,
I agree.
but as far as taking us back, what's I see happening is the status quo. What is happening over the course of the last 60 years is that now we'll go to MAGA, white MAGA. White America are becoming a minority. There's a hierarchy of statuses here, where whites on top, black on the bottom, immigrants come in and shift positions. And in that status quo, in that status quo being lost, they say in I guess 20 or so years that the white people will be the minority. And when you talk about the women's rights and the rights of immigrants, these are all issues that make white people feel like they are being oppressed. And I shared a quote on the line that for those in privilege, those in power, equality feels like oppression. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. And the backlash from that, I think, is what's being uh, expressed in MAGA. And they would say something like what you just said about, wanting to bring manufacturing back when that's not really the point. The point is to tap into, to use these dog whistles. Because what I see, I'll tell you what Black America, liberal America sees is uh, racism, um, violence that have harmed us as a Black man. You as a Black man, our ancestors um, have been hung by this racist, similar racist dog whistles, maintaining the status quo. That's undeniable. And what's being tapped into here by using those dog whistles to divide us, to pit one of us, to divide the same, similar to with suppressing the vote segment that we had earlier, suppressing the Black vote by saying, what has Kamala done for you lately? And using the marketing machine to spread that message, whether it's true or not. What in the end result will be is that Black people are, what I see happening, by a white person saying, oh, I'm not a racist. My Black MAGA friends also says that, so I can't be a racist. And using that to get in what will be in the end result the status quo of white on top, Black on the bottom, sit at the back of the bus, Jim Crow laws, racism, separate water fountains, can't eat at this restaurant. Not that that's going to come back, but it's still happening. There's still an 8-to-1 wealth gap between Black and white. And I'll wrap it up. I want to give you a chance as well. There is an economic root at all of this. And I think if people would see that, they would see what is happening. Because the white MAGA, they are being oppressed just as much, not, I won't say just as much, but they are being oppressed blindly. Hold on, give me 1 minute here. I gotta turn off this alarm. Okay, give me 1 minute. Back on. 1, 5, 4, 3, 2. White MAGA is white people, 99% over the past 60 years, the middle class has been shrinking. They have less than their fathers. Their kids will have less than them. And that is something that Trump is tapping into when we should actually be keeping the ball on the 1%. The 1%, regardless of what political party has been in power over the past 60 years, they are the only only segment of our population that has grown in wealth, while everybody else has shrunk in wealth. So by using these narratives of division, you as a Black MAGA supporter, instead of saying somebody like Trump, who is a billionaire, or Peter Thiel, who supports J.D. Vance, who's a billionaire, they continue to grow wealthier. We continue to fight over a smaller and smaller portion of the pie. And I'll end with this fact, this is stat. There's about 70% of the wealth in America is tied frozen assets, right? The remaining 13% of those assets are liquid. The 99%, which includes Black and brown folks and white population, most of them MAGA supporters, we are all fighting over that remaining 13%. At that trajectory, our discourse is only going to become more and more violent. It's going to become We're going to alienate our neighbors more and more. And eventually, this is when I talk about the unsustainability of capitalism. Eventually, we will be tearing each other apart. The 1% like Trump, they know that. And this is why they use that language. And this is why they pit black MAGA against black liberals, white MAGA against black, the immigrants against the citizens. So yeah, that's kind of my point of view on that. So that's my pushback on that, on this point. What I want to hear, how do you feel about that?
Okay. So yeah, I agree with you on towards the end where you spoke about the wealth gap. So I've been looking at this stuff since I came out of college in 98. I graduated college. So that was around the time when Gore was running, 99, he was running for president. And I started on this whole political research around 99, 2000. That's when I was a liberal voting Democrat, et cetera, et cetera. I voted for Clinton, then I voted for Gore. And then after that, uh, I didn't vote for a while. So, and in those years when I really had to sit down and look at what America was about, right? And it's a lot of information I found out, right? So how I started in this is one of, Trump's supporters and cabinet members, which was he runs InfoWars. I forget his name. What's his name? Hold on one second. InfoWars. Um, who is Alex Jones.
Alex Jones, yes.
Yes. So back in the early 2000s, he had this platform called InfoWars, which he still has now. But he came across, a lot of legal stuff. I think some tax situation and some other stuff or whatever. But um, I was introduced to a lot of things from his platform. He used to have these DVDs that he used to come out with. And people would say what they want. He was racist, this and that. I'm a person. I've always ran by this saying that one of my uncles told me. Right? He said, information can come from anywhere, even from fools. Right? I think that's a Bible verse or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but that's what he told me, or African proverb or something like that. So I always ran on that I listen to people, regardless if I agree with them or if I think they're stupid or whatever. I always listen and I gather information and I try to verify it, right? Because information is the only thing I can really go on to verify, right? So he introduced me to a lot of things. And then I saw the Zeitgeist Project. I don't know if you ever seen that DVD. It's a whole 3 DVD series that spoke about how the United States monetary system operates, the Fed, et cetera, et cetera. A whole lot. And then, following that was another series known as it was a black guy, Tariq Nasheed, with the hidden, I think it's the Hidden Truth, I think it's called, series, where he spoke about black people in America, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So, and I'm not going to go into a whole big spiel about all that. So what I learned about America is this: money rules, right? And there's been a lot of it. America has always been about class, right? And race was race was a construct. I don't know if you know this, right? So
I agree
race was
with
a
you, yes.
construct that was invented in the mid to late 1800s, right? By I think his name was Blumenbach. That was his last name, Blumenbach and Carl Meaners, I think it was. They were two anthropologists who were set out to prove through science that black people were inferior. Well, I'm sorry, that white people were superior to non-white people, right? And, that was scientifically proven wrong by them, to which they admitted that, the whole race thing was wrong. But it was pushed in American society by different think tanks, right? the Carnegie Foundations, the whoever else, right?
Mhm.
So going back to the economy, what you said about the wealth gap, and you're right. The way it's going right now, it is going to lead to violence, which is why I'm voting on
Second
my gun.
Amendment.
Right.
Another
I'm,
discussion.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I didn't mean to say the G word. I'm sorry because I know they're gonna try to
Beep,
censor your video.
beep.
Yeah, so beat that out. Yes, my Second Amendment. Right.
Mm.
So but there is a way to stop it, right? And in there's so much I want to say, but I would be here for hours talking. So there is a way to stop it, but right now I'm only one man, right? So I can only look out for my family, right? My family members, you guys, da 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 da, and try to preach something because at the end of the day, if we don't learn how to defend ourselves and pick up this part of American society as Black people, as a group, we're going to end up right back on the bottom. With all the accomplishments that as minor as they are, with all the accomplishments that we've come so far from 1865 to 1965 to 2025, if we don't defend that, it's going to be a problem, whether you're Democrat or Republican. If you're a Black man or woman living in America today, you should be gripping on to the Second Amendment because of what you just said. That wealth gap is growing. And with that wealth gap growing, it's going to become more turmoil, more chaos is going to be ensued. So you're going to need to protect yourself and defend yourself, your family, your home, your businesses, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my response to that.
And I hear you. We agree with, and this is actually one of the first things we agreed with on the WhatsApp. And I agree with 99% of what you said there. Where I diverge with you is at that last Second Amendment point. Not that. Uh, so what I think is happening with white America as well as Black America is when you don't think there is a uh, diplomatic solution, then you're only left with the violent solution. And the MLK said it. The uh, the I forgot how this quote went, but the voice of the oppressed is protest, something to that effect. Um, so I agree with you up to that point. Where I differ with you and where I diverge with you is that, and you said it. So ironically, you said that you're only one man, you and your family. And that's a mindset that is born of capitalism. And again, I'm not saying I'm a capitalist or socialist. I'm saying I'm anti what we have now.
Okay.
And community first is the first thing we need. But that's not enough because just saying that, that doesn't uh, avoid the harm that you are speaking of that will come if this trajectory continues. But what I'm saying is that there are proven techniques strategies that have worked on a mass scale that diverged a little bit away from capitalism, but it wasn't fully embraced, that looked to scripture, and which I'll get to in a bit. Um, and I'll just start with this one example. In Birmingham, Alabama, in the 1960s, I don't know the exact date, but there was a law in place there where Black people could not sit at the back of a bus.
You mean in
And,
front of the bus?
sorry, thank you. At the front of the bus. They had to sit at the back of the bus. Thank you for that.
Right.
And this was a law that was handed down from the city legislators and politicians that we had to adhere to. But then uh, there was a groundswell, a community who said, we're going to do something about this. And we are not going to do something violently. We're going to leverage our buying power to end this oppressive Jim Crow law. And what they did is community of Black people, our ancestors. Well, our ancestors are from the Caribbean, but we all share the same ancestry. We got together and said, what we are going to do is we're going to take our dollars and we're going to move it out of the Montgomery bus system until we bring that bus system down or they end this law. And the person that led this protest, this organized protest, her name was Rosa Parks. She wasn't the first. There was actually two others before her, but she was the chosen one to lead this first protest.
Right.
And the citizens decided to walk. They would carpool. They would do everything. And the city of Montgomery said, no, you guys need to ride. We need you. They found out how much they needed these people that they were segregated against with their tax dollars. Black people paying their tax dollars into the system, and yet they have to sit at the back of the box. That just ain't right. And they protested until the Montgomery bus system relented and desegregated the buses. That's voting with your dollar. I'll give one more example because you may say, oh, that's just a city in Alabama. How are we going to fight what's coming, what's happening now? Well, there was something that's similar happened in India where the colonizers, the same people who colonized where our ancestry is from in Trinidad and Tobago,
You
we
talking about
both,
Gandhi?
yes, Mahatma
Okay.
Gandhi, where the British were actually taking the resources of the land that Mother Earth, that God gave to them, and put a rule in that the natural born indigenous people of this land cannot sell salt. And they had to
Cannot what?
buy, they cannot sell salt. Salt
Okay.
was the spice salt, because salt is a spice. And they just said, this ain't right. This is our land, to go along with the other, multiples of oppressive laws that the local citizens had to abide by, which was the British rule, which is the British Empire was the largest empire around the world. So what they did, Mahatma Gandhi said, you know what we're going to do? We are going to sell salt. We're going to use our buying power, not buy the British salt and sell our own salt. And many were arrested, many were thrown into jail. But eventually, the weight of that community voting with their dollar as a unified unit was able to defeat the colonizer, and it led to the end of British rule in India. And actually, MLK, Martin Luther King, who led the Montgomery bus boycotts, modeled this protest behind the Mahatma Gandhi protest. And I'll end with this. This idea of voting with your dollar is something that, as a people, because we are divided, because of many of the same narratives that I think have us Black MAGA versus Black liberals, or MAGA versus the left, have us divided amongst each other when the 1% are the one people who are only people with all of this arguing, with all of the different political parties in power. They're the only ones that continue to get wealthier. This idea of voting with your dollar is the type of system that I am endorsing, that I am spreading the message on. Is the economic justice that I think is the answer to the answer that you think. And and I and I'll say that the Second Amendment, I believe that we should have that choice. And I do believe, based on scripture, that you fight when you have to fight. You meet people where they are. This is what's needed now. But I also say we should aim for something better, aim for the future, always aim in the direction of community. So I know I went on for a bit of a rant there, but I just want to share that as a response to what you had to say. I don't know if you want to have a second response.
In that aspect, I do agree that we do need to come together as a community and use our buying power, or as you say, voting with our dollar to our advantage. I do agree with that, right? So um there's many books on that. One of my favorite books that speaks about that. I mean, he more speaks about it from an economic standpoint. Within the realm of capitalism. I don't know if you know about this book, but it's The Blueprint to Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson.
No, sounds
Um,
like a great book.
yeah.
Into Black Power. Okay, go ahead.
Um, he speaks about it, about us coming together using group economics
Okay.
to empower ourselves. But he was also very much about the gun also. I'm
Mm.
sorry, I keep saying that word. I'm sorry.
It's,
Bleep that
it's
out.
fine. Fine. I think we already got our one viewer, so we're good.
Okay, got you. So so yeah,
What's the
so
name of the author? Sorry.
Dr. Amos Wilson. He had a few other books, but that was the one that I gravitated towards.
Okay.
Um, so in that book, he speaks about a plan of basically, um, it's like 1,000-page book. So he basically goes down a plan about Black people becoming self-sufficient using their buying power, the money that they control in their community. The only thing he didn't do was say how to actually execute it, which is what I'm writing my book about.
Mm.
So, and before I found out about that book, I was writing my book already, and then somebody told me about the book,
Mm.
and I read it, and I was like, oh wow, he's talking about the exact same things that I was talking about in my book,
Okay.
except he's not saying how to execute it. So, um, so I do agree that we need to get to community, but not necessarily a but in addition,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, we do need to prepare for the worst also,
Amen. I agree with
right?
that.
So we kind of got to we got to multitask kind of thing. So I agree with you to that extent. Like we do need to use group economics, but we also need to, in other words, when we're voting, if you're going to vote, we should be voting towards that, right? Towards politicians that will not put roadblocks, or at least limit the amount of roadblocks that we will have to, go around or go through to accomplish making our dollar strong, right?
I yes, and I feel like I gotta jump in. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
finished, but I want to
Go
jump
ahead, yeah,
in.
go ahead.
Okay, for that one point, because I think it's a key point that you just mentioned. And another reason why I'm voting for Kamala over Trump, even though I don't think either one is the direction that we need to be headed. And that idea that you just said of choice, um, in terms of who would put the most roadblocks in our way to getting the things that you mentioned. And I feel like Trump is the guy that's going to put the most roadblocks in the way just because he's trying to diminish our vote. He didn't accept the results of the election. He is the most authoritarian of the two. And I mean, somebody had mentioned, and it's actually one of the quotes that I'm going to bring up here,
Okay.
that actually, let me read that quote for you now because I think I think it's important because it speaks to this. And here it is. Yes, here it is. One of our relatives says, "Hey, you should love Trump. He tells you as it is. The others may be more extreme than him, but covering it over secret assassinations. I think it was his meant. And actually, this one person may the one person is the one person that probably sided with you a little bit.
Yeah,
I
a
don't
little
think he
bit.
went
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
way,
yeah, yeah.
but so I think that like I think everything there's nothing done by mistake. So to that, I'm just want to put that in as to why I vote for Trump. But I also want to say this again, and I mean, we are already an hour in, and we haven't even touched the surf. We haven't even scratched the surface here. Um, so I think we may have to continue this. But I do want to say this. I will go through a couple of other closer because this is a great conversation. I think it's needed, and I'm really enjoying this. I want to say this though. This is really important, and I want everybody to hear this because one of my stereotypes of Black MAGA has been dispelled here with Darren. I think the stereotype goes like this, and you hear it, and I'm sure Darren has heard it, and I've seen a lot of Black MAGA people complain about this, which is that you are a sellout. That's what they say, right? What I'm finding here is, contrary to that perception, is a proud Black man who's actually done more research than 95% of even, and I've been in activism for a long time. Well, since George Floyd deeply and not so deeply before that. But I've sat in McCarran gathering, shout out to McCarran, in a space post George Floyd every single night, rain or shine, in the snow, for 2.5 years speaking over things just like this. And even in that group, there are not too many people that are as well versed on Black empowerment as Darren. And I think that goes against the stereotype. What I see on TV, and this is maybe a part of the narrative that's being pushed, are people who are just frustrated. Black MAGA people say, I just don't like because what has Kamala done for us? Or what has Trump has done this? And then they have nothing to back it up. Darren doesn't even go in that direction. He goes, everything he has said, I agree with. Or I shouldn't say everything. I would say 80% of the symptoms I agree with. I think we disagree a little bit on the cause, but we do have a lot of overlap with the economic. Um, and I think for the solution is where we disagree and we diverge, but we still see a commonality in that one, you have to treat the situation for where we are now and aim for something further. So I think we diverge there, but I think we are both seeing a path. So basically, my summation, and we could go on for a little bit more of this is why we need to talk. I've only spoken to white MAGA. Ironically, you guys know from the podcast, I've been at work and we've been having these battles. And they're not well thought out either, to be quite honest. They just echo in many of the same narratives that I hear that are meant to divide. This is my first discussion with Black MAGA, and it's with a relative of mine, ironically. And these are well thought out. And he, I'm sure, could tell us a lot more about African history. He taught me a couple of things on the line,
as
on
well as
WhatsApp
American
line,
history.
as well as American history. So I would say that before you prejudge your Black MAGA neighbors, listen to them, because in the end, we are all in the same boat. We all came over here on the same boat, and we are still in the same boat of being divided. What Darren is speaking to, and one of my favorite activists, Dr. Umar, is speaking the same thing, which is
But yeah, I met
that
Umar. Me and Umar had a great conversation.
you met him, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow, I love it.
Umar is Umar is a cool dude. Like I like him. Like I went to a couple of his. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I went to a couple of his seminars. I met
Please
him
cut
in
me off. I want to hear
person,
this.
and we spoke about the same stuff that we talk about now, right? Back when Trump was in office and stuff like that. And he was against Trump at first, but he's kind of on the line, kind of right now. So and I get it. He's kind of cautious, but he's starting to understand what Black MAGA was talking about a little
Mm.
bit, in certain aspects. So, but go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Amen.
you off.
No, I love. Listen, that's amazing because we want to actually, me and my other co-host for the new podcast got to do better, my brother. We are thinking of bringing Dr. Umar on and reaching out to him because as I will continue, because Dr. Umar has the similar vibe to what you have there, which is your concern in the end is about Black upliftment, Black
Right.
progression, and I
I
think
call it
the
Black advancement.
Black advancement,
Yes.
and we all, the problem I think that we as Black liberals are directing towards Black MAGA is that we somehow have this mischaracterization that they are not about Black upliftment, that they are
Right.
about white upliftment. But I
No.
even on the line, even on the WhatsApp, I picked this up from Darren. I've only picked it up during this last week. That no, he's actually as evidence here by actually showing up more about Black upliftment than the folks who are just talking. He's writing a book. He's meeting people. He's doing his research. So I just want to commend you, Darren, for coming on. I want to actually continue to invite you on these discussions because I think people need to hear this. And
Okay.
I'm still strongly against Trump because, and I love that we share this because for me, morality matters. I think and that goes to scripture where we differ on our scriptural um, uh, um, beliefs, not that you have scriptural beliefs, but in our spirituality, we kind of diverge there. So I think that's also
Right.
something that we could talk about, but that's
Okay.
fair. That's a fair conversation. I could see the reasoning. I could understand where he's coming from. And in the end, and this is what I was going to say about Dr. Umar, like I agree with 90% of what he says. And that 10% but for that 10% that I don't agree with, I would still ride with him because he's still in the end for black upliftment.
Right,
so,
exactly, exactly.
so, that's why I love this. So, Darren, I mean, we got a few more. I think we should leave the rest. I want to, keep it at an hour. We're going over.
All right.
If you want to add something, if you want to say something else, we want to do a couple more quotes. You want to answer a couple more quotes, but I think if we add one more, we'll be going for another half hour. But it's
Yeah,
up to
pretty
you.
much. Yeah. So we can save it for the next show.
All right. So, Darren, thank you so much, man. My cousin, we grew up. I'm older than him, but he grew up with us in Brooklyn, New York City, and we're now going our separate ways. And thank you, Darren, for standing up to the family, for sharing your views, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. Peace and blessings. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Check out the live stream. Also, go to thevalueexchange.org. We have many great things happening there. And check out our new podcast, Gots to Do Better, my brother. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Peace and blessings.